Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Outliers YouTube channel and podcast series and our program Get to Know. I'm your host, DP Lyle, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Kathleen Antrim.
Thanks, Doug. It is great to be here. And we're doing a series on Edgar Award nominees. And I am so excited that we've got a best-selling author and a nominee for Best Novel of the Year, Allison Epstein. Allison, welcome to Get to Know.
Thanks so much for having me. It's wild to be here as an Edgar nominated novelist. That
Oh
is
my
was
gosh.
not on my bucket list for the year, but here
Well,
we are.
congratulations. It's
Thank you.
truly amazing. You're in great company. As we came on the air, I know you're up against Scott Turow and a number of other amazing writers. And yeah, we got our fingers crossed for you. It's very exciting. But as we said, you've already won just by being nominated. It's such a huge honor. And golly, I think that it's going to be the 80th anniversary of the Edgars this
Oh
upcoming
gosh.
year. So yeah, long history. And now you're part of that history, which is really cool. As our viewers know, I often like to delve a little bit into the background of our writers. And so I'm going to go there with you, and hopefully you won't mind. I'd like to
And what
talk a
you
little
found.
bit. I'd like to talk a little bit about your childhood. And what I'd like to know is if you feel your childhood contributed to you becoming a writer. Were you an introverted child, an extroverted child? Did you have imaginary friends? Share it with us.
Yeah, that's my childhood was like tailor designed for me to be exactly the kind of writer that I am. It's funny the more I think about it. I was a middle child raised by an English major and a history teacher. So the fact that I'm a historical fiction novelist, I just look like, yeah, of course you were. You had a room full of books in your house. You went on historical themed family vacations every summer. Like I was 7 or 8 and we went to the site of the Boston Massacre and we looked at all the plaques. Like that was our family trips. So the fact that I'm here now, like, makes a lot of sense to me.
Now, did you have imaginary friends? Were you an outgoing child? Were you an introverted child?
I was an introverted child growing up. I loved like writing my silly little stories for myself, and I would make my first and second grade friends read them, but no one else was allowed to. Of course, this is the circle for people who are allowed to read my things. And I think as I got older, I sort of forced myself to cosplay as an extrovert, so I can hold it for about 5 or 6 hours of extroversion, and then I still have to kind of come home and lay down in my quiet little introvert
And just stare?
cocoon.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
Well,
love your tuxedo cat. We have
Oh,
one.
yeah,
thank you. She's just
We have one.
wandering around,
Yeah, yeah, that's what
prowling.
they do.
yes,
Yeah, I
definitely
love it.
prowling.
Yeah.
So, did you read a lot when you were a child?
Yes. I was reading before I went to kindergarten. It was like my favorite thing. That was me in preschool, like pulling books off of the shelves and pretending that I could read them until I actually could read them. I was I don't know, a Magic Treehouse kid. I read every one of those books, which was just like two kids who can travel back in time and meet the dinosaurs. I'm like, that would be great. So yeah, it's been like that since forever.
So cool, so cool.
So when did you actually say, okay, I'm going to write a book? And what was that process? I mean, when did you say, I'm going to be a writer?
Well, I'm going to tell you two answers because the first answer is when I was like 13 and I said, great. You know what I want for my 13th birthday? I said to my mom, I said, I want to get a literary agent for my birthday. And she said, excuse me? And I said, yeah, I've got a manuscript all ready to go. How do we do that? This was in the height of the Twilight years, so it was a vampire romance manuscript that I wrote at age 13. No one's ever allowed to read it. I will burn it with my papers. But since then, I kind of knew this is what I want to do. And I then, thank God, no one let me publish that. And I stepped back and like got better and learned how to write. And then my first book that I actually said, I think this is something and I would like to actually try to sell this was, gosh, 2015 or so. I had been working on it since 2015. It was my undergraduate thesis project. And I worked on it for that whole year and then the following like 4 or 5 years because I was very slow and very bad at drafting at that point. And then just kind of said, I love this. I care about this. This is the one that I want to try with.
Okay. And you obviously gravitated toward historical fiction because of what you said, your background. Uh, did you find that intimidating in any way? Like, how are you gonna gather all this information to make a believable tale? Was there angst there? Because I know a lot of historical novelists, they're like, oh my God, the hard part's getting ready to write, you know?
The long part is getting ready to write for sure. That
Yeah.
takes forever. But to me, that's also the fun part of it. I think if I didn't love the research, I wouldn't write historical fiction. And to me, usually the story that I want to tell comes out of the research. So that was the case for my first book too. I found like this incredible historical figure and time period that I wanted to write about. And the first thing that I wanted to do was just learn everything I possibly could. So it was a just deep, deep research, and then the writing of it afterwards was just like, how can I tell everybody all these cool things that I learned? And it's still a little bit like that.
Well, what drew you to Fagin the Thief? I mean, what historical tidbit drew you into that world?
Yeah, I think, well, I studied English in college, and so I had always sort of loved Dickens. I think you're obligated to love Dickens if you read English literature,
Exactly.
but I actually first came to the story of Oliver Twist through like the Broadway musical. That's my other secret love is stage musicals. And so I saw Oliver when I was very young, and in that show, of course, Fagin is sanitized way down because it's a musical for children, but I was exactly the right age for that show and thought, oh my God, this guy's amazing. I love this character. He's one of my favorites. And I've always had a soft spot in my heart for him. And then I've obviously, if you read the original Dickens novel, it's a very different, upsetting story. And so I sort of had been thinking for a long time, there's a story in there of a character who's amazing and who deserves to have his story told. And I had always sort of assumed, retellings are becoming more and more popular. Someone will do that, and I'll get to read it and enjoy it, and that will be very relaxing for me. But I didn't see it, and I was thinking, okay, maybe I'm the one who can do this. Maybe I can work on it. And so I thought about it for several years, and then eventually sort of geared up my nerve and emailed my agent and said, I'm afraid to do this, but I'm going to do it. Don't let me back out. And she kept me to it.
Well, one of the things that writers of historical fiction always struggle with is how to stick to the facts and how to create. Well,
Yeah.
you're starting with a fictional character, and yet it's a fictional character that is written in stone. It's almost as if he was the president or something because, it's a character that you can't mess with because, well, it's Dickens. So
Right.
how did you balance that between creating your own tale and your own character versus what Dickens had created?
Yeah, no, first, you're so right. The last thing you want to do is get a horde of angry Dickens fans after you because they are passionate people. I've met a lot of them.
They will march on the castle. Yes.
Yes, they will. And I love them for it. So, yeah, I knew I had to like really, any changes that I'm making, I have to be intentional and thoughtful about. I can't just get a thing wrong out of Dickens. And like, of course, I may still have, but I tried very hard not to. But my overall approach to this book was that I wanted to stick as close to the actions and the characters of Oliver Twist as possible. I didn't want to make changes just for the sake of making changes. But I also didn't want to be tied to Dickens's choices if I felt like they would land badly for a modern reader. There are certain things that just like it's 2025, not 1838. There are certain things we don't really want to read about anymore. And then there's some changes that I made where I felt like I was coming at my characters from a different approach than Dickens was. He was writing very much this sort of morality tale where characters are either good or they're bad, and they sort of get what they deserve in that sort of fairy tale-esque way. And I was writing it from a more realist perspective where I wanted to do a little bit more psychological insight into my characters. And so there are some things that Dickens has Fagin or Bill Sykes do that once you start treating them like people, it just like they wouldn't do that. That feels fictional. It doesn't feel real. And so there are a few things that I said, okay, I will stand by this change, and I think it's justified for my kind of book versus his kind of book.
I
Cool.
find that just fascinating. I mean, to be able to look at that, and everybody is not all good or all bad. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming that by saying that, you were trying to really bring this character to life in 2025 and give them a more well-rounded perspective. Um, so when you looked at that, I mean, that had to be a struggle to make that decision. And have you gotten any backlash from it?
I wouldn't say I've gotten backlash. I think I've had some people who respond differently to the characters, which has been really interesting for me. I've had some people say, "Oh, there are certain things that Fagin does in this book that are unforgivable, and I can't believe that you'd want to spend time with him." And then I've had other people tell me, "I thought you made him an incredibly sympathetic character, and I was on his side the whole way." And I just think that's an interesting way because it feels very real to me that, we all feel differently toward people who make decisions based on their situation. But what I wanted was for the reader to come along with me and understand. I don't actually care whether the reader thinks this was a good decision or a bad decision. I want the reader to understand the circumstances and the thoughts that brought the person to think this is the best decision I have at the time, whether or not you agree.
Cool.
And how long did
Excellent.
it take you to write this novel?
This is the fastest novel I've ever written because I'm a very slow writer. I think I drafted this in about 8 months, which for me is like lightning fast. Then it was about a year and a half, 2 years of revisions because, of course, it was. But for me, I felt like I sat down with a blank page and I sort of just started writing the scenes that were shiny and interesting to me. And most of those made it into the final draft. I sort of knew the shape of it before I got in. And I do not always do that. So it was a relief for me.
I want to jump back real quick, just because a lot of our viewers are new writers.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get published for the first time?
I started drafting my first book, I think fall of 2014 through 2015, and it was published in February of 2021. And I worked on it more or less every day in between there. It went
So an
through.
overnight
Yeah.
success,
Yes.
Yeah,
as
absolutely.
they
It was just
say.
like snap your fingers, first draft, best. I think there are 14 drafts of that book on
Yeah.
my hard drive
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So, so if you had a piece of advice for a brand new writer, or even for yourself when you were starting out, what would it be?
Um, yeah, I think two things because they go together. One of them is it's okay if it's bad at first. It's probably going to be bad at first. I started out as I was very precious about my drafts and I wanted to get it all down on the page and then ship it off immediately and say, great, it's done. I did it. It's wonderful. And that I think I would have saved myself a lot of time and heartache if I had known going in, it's not going to be great. You're going to need to take it apart and put it back together. And that's fine. In fact, sometimes it's better because that's going to help you work faster and more efficiently if you're not trying to polish every little tiny bit as you go. But the flip side of that is you really need somebody to be in your corner and tell you that it's going to be good eventually. Or at least I do. I have a hard time maintaining that sort of motivation internally for myself. I get very caught up in the, oh God, it's terrible and it's never going to get better. And so what I do is I have my beloved group of beta readers and I will give them very specific instructions for what kind of read I need at a certain point. Sometimes I need them to be my most honest critics, and sometimes I need them to say, "Tell me 5 things you think are good about this. I don't want any criticism right now. I want you to tell me what you think is good because I need to hear it." So I think balancing when it's going to be bad and also remembering that parts of it are still good.
yep. That's a
Yeah.
tough lesson, but it's a necessary lesson. Yes.
Mhm.
You know. And you go back and
Absolutely.
start reading of the second draft, it's like, oh, this is awful. I can't believe I wrote this. Then you say, wow, this is brilliant. I'm pretty good. And you go backwards and forth between the two
Every
invariably.
other sentence, you're like, man, the stupidest
Exactly.
person in the world wrote this. Oh, that's pretty good. No, no.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I have to ask you this.
Mhm.
Where were you and what were you doing the moment you received the message that this book had been nominated for an Edgar Award?
I I was sitting right here in this very desk. This is where I sit to do my day job. I work in consulting during the day, and so it was whatever morning it was, and I my phone went off next to me, and I had an Instagram DM from a person I didn't know who follows me that said, "Congratulations on your Edgar Award." And I said, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Congratulations on my what now?" So I had to cancel my meetings for the afternoon and be like, okay, now I just have to process this for myself. That
Exactly.
day was shot.
You have to wallow a little bit,
Yeah,
great
positive
things,
wallowing, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
In the life of a writer, like you said, it took you 6 years basically to get published for the first time. So things come slow to us. So when you get a really great thing, you gotta enjoy it.
Yes, I'm like, I'm gonna sit in this. I'm gonna tell everybody I know. I'm gonna get a bottle of champagne delivered to my apartment. It'll be great.
I love it.
Well, you already know this, but this is life changing. This is
Yeah.
career changing. This nomination alone puts you in a different category and forever. That's the beauty of the Edgars. It's really a special award, and um, I remember being nominated very well. It was earth shaking. It's like, wow, how did this
Yeah.
happen?
Just looking at the
I'm
list
not
of
worthy.
exactly the name of I was looking at the other authors and books in my category, and then like my gut reaction was, "Who let me in here? This
Yeah,
seems like a
exactly. I don't
mistake."
belong to this club. Yeah.
Right.
Well, you do, and congratulations.
Thank
And
you.
to get there with a historical fiction is fantastic in and of itself. It's not a thriller, it's not a crime fiction, so to speak. The historical fiction, fantastic, fantastic.
Thank you so much. I'm really, really thrilled and grateful and just happy to make it this far.
And you should be. Yeah.
So Allison, tell our viewers where they can learn more about you, where they can get your books.
Yes, all of the links to everything that I do are on my website, AllisonEpstein.com. I'm gradually weeding myself off of social media, but you can still find me on Instagram. I'm at Rapscallison. It's Rapscallion with an S. It's the best pun I've ever come up with. You can also find me on Substack under the same name.
Fantastic. Well, this has been a great interview. You are really fun. We've got to have you back because I know you've got more coming down the pike.
I'd
Yes.
love to.
And good luck with the Edgars. As we said, you've already won just by being nominated. It's such an honor. And yeah, we'll be anxious to see what happens that night. Doug,
Thank
I'll
you
throw
so
it back
much.
to you.
Yeah, Allison, thank you for being with us. And again, congratulations. I mean, many times over. Uh, the advice that you haven't been to the Edgars, go there, soak it all in, stop and look around and smell everything because it is your night, and it'll be fun and anxiety producing, but also fun. So enjoy it to the fullest. And
Thank you
thank you
so
for
much.
being here. So that wraps up this episode of Get to Know here on the Outliers YouTube channel and podcast series. And as you know, we will be back with more interviews and more fun down the road. So until then, keep reading, keep writing, keep having fun, and try not to get caught.